How do you be out of network? Well, there are several things that you have to do to be out of network. And before I start with how to do it, I want to give you some examples. These are real life examples who have agreed that I can use their information. Now, I'm not going to use their names on this call tonight. About a week ago, I did a call with a group of our clients, and these doctors I'm using as examples actually spoke live, so their names and numbers were divulged. But tonight, I'm not going to do that. But one of them is a doctor in a small town, about 50 or 60,000. It's not a real small town, but it's certainly not a large metropolitan area. 3 years ago, he had a practice driven by PPOs. He belonged to every PPO. He was working about 200 days, a little over 200 days per year, and a large staff, and doing 1.6 million. Now, by a lot of standards would say, wow, this is great, he's doing just fine. Well, he got tired of having his treatment plans dictated by the insurance companies. He joined our program. 2019, he just completed the year. At the end of the year, I got a gratitude letter from him. And last year, he broke 2 million, but he was completely fee for service. He was completely fee for service. He's not in network with anybody. People come in, he does treatment, they pay him, and he helps them. The office still bills the insurance company, but it's up to the patient to pay it first. Now, the patient is reimbursed, but he only worked patient days, 145. Now, he and his wife have 3 children, so that equated to a lot more family time and a lot higher net income. You see, at 2 million, he shared with us his overhead is right at 54%. So he's making just right at $1 million working 145 days, but he's doing treatment that he really enjoys. Now, another lady, that was a lady who practices in Montana, fee for service, right at $1 million. I'm going to share some different size practices with you here. Right at $1 million, totally fee for service. Now, the interesting thing was when she joined our program, she was carrying, I believe, $85,000 in accounts receivable. And at the end of the year, she had $15,000 in accounts receivable and had reduced the days considerably. And I don't have the exact numbers on that. A large practice. This practice is in Oregon, on the Oregon coast. 5 million, second year in a row. Now that's with 3 providers. That's 3 providers, totally out of service. And one of the doctors, and one of his quotes from that doctor is, "I'm just like the grocery store. Everybody pays the same." Now he's in a small town of probably 25 to 30,000 people. He's the only doctor that's out of service. He does no external marketing at this point, and he's getting 140 new patients a month, word of mouth. Now, he will tell you, and he was asked on many patients on this call, many clients on this call, how he does that? Well, he follows our Blatchford concept of service. For example, they've got scripts on the telephone. All these doctors have great scripts on the phone. Everybody is trained. It's not like you just answer the phone and you say whatever comes to mind. And how do you deal with the question of no, we're not in network. Actually, the term they use is, we are not restricted. We're a non-restricted office. What do you mean non-restricted? Well, we're not restricted as to our treatment plans. We're not restricted to the quality of labs that we use. We're not restricted to the quality of the materials we use. We're free to use what we think is best for you. Now, that's much better than saying we're out of network and you have to pay for everything. They're unrestricted. So you relate it to what is good for the patient. See, every patient says, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for me is, hey, we get better care here. Now, another thing that happens in that office as you walk in, that receptionist who greets you actually doesn't just sit there. And I've said for years, I want that receptionist to stand up, I want you to come around the counter, and I want you to greet that patient. And they do that. You see, so they have to start to see immediately that there is a difference here. There is a difference. We are going to get better care. Now, we'll come back to some of the things you have to do. The first step you have to do, if you're interested in being out of network, the first thing is to evaluate the situation you're in. Now, you have to evaluate the financial situation of the practice. And there are a couple of key indicators that I think are critical here. One is you need to know your overhead per hour. It's a very simple calculation. Most dentists don't know it, and most dental staff members don't know the overhead per hour. And I remember lecturing when I was lecturing a lot, and I would have all the office managers put your hands up. And I said, what's it cost to do a crown in your practice? And they tell me the lab fee. And I said, no, that's the lab fee. What's it cost to do a crown? And they don't have a clue. What's it cost to do an implant? What's it cost for a hygiene visit? And they don't know because they don't know the overhead per hour. Very simple concept, a very simple number to calculate. Just add up your total income, subtract all the doctor benefits. Now I subtract the lab as well. And if you're using CAD/CAM, which many of you are, we have to do some extrapolation here and figure out what would the lab bill be if I were sending it out. Now we have a number. What does it cost to do all the dentistry here last year? Now, how many hours did we work? Divide it, and there's your answer. That's the overhead per hour. It doesn't, and then you divide by number of providers. That's if you have a doctor and one hygienist, you would divide by 2. And the cost for a hygiene patient is exactly the cost of an operative crown and bridge patient. You see, once the lab bill is pulled out, you need to know that number. Secondly, we do the 80-20 rule, and we've actually refined that, and we call it the 20-60-20 rule. Because it's a very simple Excel spreadsheet. List all your patients by name, how much they spent in your office in the last 12 months, and then column C is a running total. When you get everything entered, arrange column B, that would be the amount spent in descending order, and you will have the people that spent the most at the top, the people that spent the least at the bottom. All right, here's the results. You will find that the top 20% of your patients provide you with 80% of your income.
I can believe that.
Now, we call those the top 20, and I want to know all about the top 20.
Yes, thank you so much, Doctor. I want to talk to you about many different points that you brought up here. For us, peer-to-peer collaboration is the solution for the future of preserving our industry. I mean, you've been at it for over 40 years, and you've seen it all come and go, and some incredible credentials that you carry with you. You considered by many as the America's leading dental coach, and for 20 years you practiced in Corvallis, Oregon, correct?
Corvallis, yes.
Yeah, Corvallis. Wonderful. And for 39 years, you've had Blatchford Solutions. You have helped thousands upon thousands of doctors. Now you're passing the baton on to your daughter, who is also a colleague of ours, who's grown up around this, Dr. Christina. And we are very excited to hear more on this because you've dedicated your life essentially to what I'm trying to explore, is just peer-to-peer. And I want to get your motivation and all those things. Why did we do it? The peer-to-peer concept, after dental school and those offices you mentioned in Illinois, I went into an MBA program and traveled a lot and did practice in over 300 offices doing surgery and root canals and the more complex stuff. And nighttime was MBA time, and I got involved with the financial sector a little bit, and I saw this booming industry of peer-to-peer financing through the blockchain systems and decentralization and cutting out the banks and the third parties. And I got enticed and wanted to do something like this for us in our profession, because the lean means system. And we did the Global Implantology Summit in 2018, and then we did the Global Executive Summit in 2019, and ideas start flourishing out of it and how we can apply these concepts to CE, to education, to turning to colleagues that have done this in their career and getting their advice so our next generation doesn't have to suffer the same consequences or become victim of the corporate takeover in dentistry. So you're actually the protege of how we can create self-sufficient systems for our industry so we don't end up like pharmacists and optometrists. So the top 100 is a simple example of going around and bringing 70 countries together and all this mind to a very thorough system of selection, and turning to these advisors and getting access, which access is power, and knowledge is power, and having that access allows us to turn to people and get their advice and disseminate it to our colleagues. So I'm really interested in hearing many things of the questions that my colleagues have sent to me to ask you, and many others. So maybe we can get started. What was your motivation behind all of these blogs and videos and articles and courses, and aside your clinical practice and assessing profitability and dental practice management, give us a little bit of your take on that.
Well, I was blessed to have some very good mentors to start with. As a matter of fact, I was sharing with Kenor, before this started, I'm attending a memorial service of one of them, a giant in dentistry, Omar Reed. I had a chance about 6 weeks ago to spend some time with he and his wife at their home in Phoenix. He was one of my early mentors. I had other people who took me under their wing and helped me. And I just saw so many dentists floundering, and I was able to put together a practice with the help of the people I've mentioned and several other consultants. We were breaking $1 million back in '85. One doctor, crowns were $300 at that time. And it kind of started out, that I would meet dentists at CE courses. I was a CE junkie. They would hear what we're doing. They'd want to come visit us, see what we were doing. And it kind of started from there. It kind of grew. It was a hobby, just helping people. And what I see is dentistry is such a wonderful thing. And I hate to see it go the direction of optometry, medicine cooked. I mean, the physicians, no physician wants their child to be a physician. All my physician friends want their children to become dentists. But we've got an opportunity right now, and if we don't grasp it, we're going to end up the same way. And the insurance companies have got a plan for us. Dentists, we all work independently, we work separately, and we're falling right into their lap. And that's one of my big things, is to get dentists out of this, provide a level of service that patients will be attracted to our practices over the insurance-driven practices. So really, that's my motivation. Dentistry has been good to me. It provided a wonderful lifestyle for my wife, my family, and for our clients. We've had over 4,000 clients that these people are taking 8 weeks off a year. Some are taking 12 weeks off a year, and they're doing great dentistry. They're attending the CE courses. They're one of the doctors I quoted earlier, once we started to work with him, he completed the Coyce Institute, 9 trips out there. He became certified in IV sedation. He went through several courses on implant placement, and he's just delivering better care to his patients. And that's really the thing, is patients deserve better care than what the insurance companies are allowing. Long answer to the motivation, but there you are.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad that we find like-minded people like yourself, and dentistry has been good to a lot of us. And I would like my kid to also be a dentist, secretly deep inside. I don't tell my wife, but
I think you should. And we didn't push our daughter Christina to be a dentist. As a matter of fact, she had kind of a roundabout way. She really never expressed any interest in it when I was practicing. And her first degree was in fashion merchandising at the University of Arizona. She worked at Nordstrom for a year, decided to go back to school and get another degree in commercial interior architecture. She designed medical and dental offices for 6 years. Then at 31, said, "Dad, I think I'll go to dental school." And I said,
boy, did that make you happy.
Well, it did. But I had to say, I said, "Why are you doing this? Because if you're doing it to please me, it's way too much work." She said, "No, I really want to do it." I said, "What's the reason?" She said, "Well, lifestyle." She said, "I'm working 60 hours a week. My husband's an architect. He works 60 hours a week. You always came home happy. We had great vacations, and I want to do that."
Lovely. So I'm looking forward to working with her in the many years to come. And you've sort of established yourself as the preeminent expert on practice management for sole proprietors, the little guy versus the big guy. And we don't have as many resources that the big guys do. And insurance issue is the #1 complaint. I hear from colleagues in different chat rooms, and these people are sick of it. They're sick of the insurance companies devaluing our value, devaluing us and our value of services that we provide year after year. So these people have to work harder, they have less time with their families, and they're looking for solutions. And I thought it would be a great idea to pick your brain on these topics.
Well, here's an interesting thing. So today on one of the forums I'm watching, a lady says, "I'm working in primarily a fee-for-service office. I'm not as busy as I would like, so I'm thinking about signing up for 2 insurance PPOs." and I'll get 65 or 70% of my normal fee. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You've got patients paying full fee, and you want to sign up for a PPO to be busier? I'd rather go fishing. I mean, 65 to 70% of your normal fee, you don't take anything home, doctor.
No.
You know, I'm on a panel of so-called experts at the ADA, and we're called in to figure out guidelines for practices. And the average overhead for a solo practitioner today, you know, is 74 to 75%. And they want to do treatment for 65% of my normal fee. I lose 10%. Why don't you just line up all these patients, write them a check for 10% of your fee, and send them down the street and go fishing?
What I mean, yes, that's obviously a big problem. So, what do you say to that person that is afraid to either get out of network or to drop? See, most of them are worried about that patient that calls, and the only thing that comes out of the mouth is, "What does my insurance cover? What does my insurance cover? What does my?" How do you handle that situation?
Well, let's go back to this 80-20 rule I was talking about. And if you start to study the 80-20 rule, start to study that top 20% of your practice, and I've seen this on hundreds of practices, so I speak some authority on this. When you study the age, the gender, the type of treatment, the insurance they have, the part of town they come from, their educational level, if you know it, everything about that patient. And one of the interesting things you will find is most of those patients are non-PPO patients. They're the fee-for-service patients. So now, then you have the 60% in the middle. It contributes another 80% of your income. So now you're up to 110% of your, excuse me, they contribute 30%, 80 and 30. You're up to 110%. And now you have the bottom 20% to go. And you look at those people. They're the ones that are on the PPOs. They're the ones that cancel their appointments. They're the ones that don't accept treatment. And most offices set all their office policy and all their decisions based on the bottom 20%. So we start to focus on the top 20%. We let the bottom 20% go away. We're losing money on them anyway. We're losing 10%. So what's the point?
What is the point exactly?
When you study the overhead per hour, if a patient misses a hygiene visit, you're in the hole on that patient for about 3 years, assuming they make every other appointment, just to get back to even. And when patients don't pay themselves, they don't place value on what we do. They're the ones who cancel. They're the ones who, they don't show for their appointment, so let them go. So here's the interesting thing. So we evaluate a practice and we look at each PPO, the lowest reimbursement rates, the one that has the lowest reimbursement rates and the smallest impact on the practice. We change that relationship. Now, part of it is scripting. We don't say we're dropping insurance. No. We are changing the relationship with your insurance company.
Perfect.
We're changing our relationship. We're going to be a non-restricted office, which means you can still come here, but we're no longer restricted by the insurance company's guidelines, which were designed to make maximum profit for the insurance company, not about your care.
Definitely can relate to that. That's a good clarification. So you're not dropping insurance. You're going to become a non-restrictive office that will work with your insurance, but we're going to go based off our fees. How do we handle the billing? Do we help them file? What do we do?
You know, I have different offices that do it different ways. I have some offices that simply fill out the forms and give it to the patient. I have other offices that file the fees, but all of our offices, some of them collect the full fee up front. They collect the full fee up front, and of course we use outside funding sources for that on larger cases, but we collect the full fee. I have other offices that underestimate the insurance payment and collect the copay. Now, you want to get real gutsy here and eliminate all your cancellations? Collect the copay, this predicted copay, or the full amount, or as one office does, $100 an hour, and you make that payment when you make the appointment.
Interesting.
Not when you come in for the appointment, when you make the appointment. Now these people have already paid. And listen, this is not new to patients. Patients are that you book a reservation in a hotel, when do you give them the credit card?
Up front, right.
You book a trip on the airlines, when do you pay? Do you wait till you show up that day at the airport?
Yeah, and you don't go to the grocery store and buy all your groceries and say, hey, I'll pay you later. They're not going to let you leave the facility.
And patients and team members say, well, our patients aren't used to that. No, your patients are used to it. And I used to draw a circle like this. These are a big circle, look like eggs in a frying pan. And this big circle represents your patient's life. And then a small circle represents maybe their home, maybe one for their car, maybe one for travel, maybe one for education. And then with a pencil, you put a small dot somewhere in that circle, and that represents dentistry in your patient's life. So every place else they pay cash for hundreds of transactions a year, and twice a year they come to a dental office. So they're already used to paying cash.
That's right.
It's the dentist. Now, a comment that one of our clients made the other night on this call that I was on, and he did say something that was very revealing. He said, the staff that got me to 1.6 million with PPOs is not the same staff that got me to 2 million fee for service.
Right.
And he had many discussions with him about a subject we discuss a lot called deserve level. And some could handle it and some couldn't. Some had this in their head that patients won't pay for dentistry. Patients won't do this. Well, if that's your message that you're circulating up here in your head, that's the message you portray to your patients as well. And you are correct. Your patients will not see the value of dentistry either. But if your message is, this is a valuable service, we do a great job, it's a bargain in our office, that's the message your patients get. It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. So part of that, and then you need to develop, I think you need to develop some really good systems. I think probably the biggest system, and I see a question here from Kayvon Javed, and he says, Dr. Blatchford, how do we get patients to follow our advice on the best treatment plan options versus what the insurance covers? Well, that's a whole nother subject, but I'll tell you something. First off, my premise is nobody needs any dentistry. They don't even need their teeth. What you've got to do, Dr. Javed, is find out what your patients want. And this is a complete shift for most dentists. Instead of lecturing them on what you think they need, which doesn't work very well, and try to educate them into submission. In other words, if you just knew what I know, you would do this. And we tried this method, it doesn't work. Instead, we teach people to ask questions. We call them Blatchford's power questions. And I've developed these questions over a 30-year period. And you find out what the patients want. And you even start out with, you really don't need anything. You don't even need your teeth. And I used to tell the story over and over again. Let me tell you about my grandparents, who all lived long, useful lives, and edentulous in their early 20s. They don't need teeth. Now, find out what they want. And we find people want to keep their teeth. They want them to look reasonably nice. They want to avoid dental problems, that is discomfort, inconvenience of breaking teeth, and they want value. That's what they want. And you've got to find out what they want, why they want it. Another important question to ask is, have you ever considered a budget for this? Very important question. And people are so afraid to ask that question. Why? You're going to buy a car, you walk into the showroom, a salesperson, and what's the first question? The question they ask you within minutes.
What's your budget?
What's your budget? You go to a real estate office to buy a home. What's the question they ask you within minutes?
Yes, it's the same question. What is your budget?
What's your budget? You go to buy a present for someone in a shop. We'll use a sporting goods store as an example, a great place to buy presents. And what do they ask you first? What's your budget? Right. So it's a great question, and it gets the patient talking about this, and you open up an open conversation with the patient about what they want instead of what we think you need.
Correct. It gives us also an effective way to treatment plan, because sometimes we sit there and we have 5, 6, 7 options, and it sucks up 2 hours of your time because we're obligated to give them different options. And it's good to have an idea, it's a $30,000 full mouth rehab case versus a $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 denture treatment is a world of difference. So it's a good idea to kind of get an idea of what they're working with. I appreciate that response because Kayvon makes a good point. These insurance companies, just like the DSOs, the management entities that are violating certain rules and regulations, and big pharma and lobbyists and everybody that's trying to put us in the corner in our operatories should know that the only reason they exist is because of us. If we start denying them, the same way they got big, that's the same way they would go away. Because you've seen it over the last 40 years, right? We started accepting them, and now they're causing problems in the patient-doctor relationship, which is a very sad story. But the patients are coming in, and who cares what the insurance company says, what treatment the patient wants?
It's a little bit like a drug. This insurance is like a drug. When insurance first got started, and I was practicing, we actually practiced a few years before we had any insurance. And when insurance first got started, and it started on the West Coast, actually, I believe it was the grocery clerks in California, the longshoremen in Washington were the first dental insurance plans. And the reimbursement rates were actually higher than what we were charging patients at the time.
Are you telling me that it goes back to a supermarket in California, like the coronavirus?
There was a grocery clerk
in China.
I think it was a grocery clerk's children that had the first dental insurance plans. But anyway, it goes back into the late 60s, early 70s. But the reimbursement rates were actually very good. And by the way, the maximum per year was $1,500. And that was 40 years ago.
Wow.
Actually, almost 50 years ago. And so if at that time was $100 and the patient has a $1,500 max, I mean, you could literally do a full mouth rehab because it would pay 50%, you see, but they stayed the same. But once they got us hooked, they just started lowering the rates. And you take a look at some of these, and Delta is absolutely committed to lowering fees all across the country.
You can't negotiate with them. I mean, if you hire an organization and negotiate on your behalf with the companies, they'll tell you Delta will not negotiate.
Exactly.
The other ones will negotiate, but that's another headache and a half. It's tremendous bureaucracy.
And they get away with it because dentists sign up for these programs. If the dentist did not sign up to be a network, they would not exist. It's that simple.
Yes, and we have to figure out a way.
I had this conversation with a colleague one time, and he said the problem is in dentistry, if dentists were to set up a firing squad, they stand in a circle. And this is why the insurance companies do so well, because we're standing in a circle shooting at each other. And if the dentists could just get it, and by the way, we have dentists in towns all across America that have been fee-for-service for years, and I think that's the big thing. And you know, I just think I think dentists are good people. I mean, I think I've met literally thousands of dentists in my career, and they're good people. And I think the question to ask to really make your skin squirm is the moral and ethical issue of having certain patients in your practice subsidize those insurance patients, so the insurance executives can make money. Now, you know, I just have to point out, you know, the typical Delta CEO in pretty much every state is making somewhere around $3 to $5 million a year in compensation. And that is the person that puts out the directive that you need to lower your fees, doctor. And you need to lower your fees so I can continue to make my $3 to $5 million a year.
There are more moral issues, Bill. The moral issues of somebody telling you, we will pay for this procedure and we don't pay for this procedure, and then the patients don't get those procedures. If we were to pull off something like this, we would lose our licenses. How can they pull this off? Because they have lobbyists everywhere.
Well, that's right. And they're not licensed. And we're also always told that dentists can't talk about fees. We can't talk about the insurance companies. We can't talk about this. Well, my wife and I travel quite a bit, and we were actually on a hiking trip in Bhutan last spring. And one of the couples on the hike, we didn't know all these people. There were about a dozen of us, and one of them designed the software for all the deltas in the country. And I didn't know what he had done, and he said, I designed software. And then he found out I was a dentist. I said, well, one of my big clients was Delta Dental. And I said, well, that's interesting. What'd you do for them? And he told me how they set up the database for all the Delta Dentals across the United States. And I said, now, we've been told for years that it's illegal to get together and discuss fees. Do the insurance companies share data across state lines? He said, of course they do. Every Delta knows exactly, they know exactly what they can get away with paying, and at what point will doctors actually say, oh, we're not doing this anymore. But they've studied this. They know exactly how far they can squeeze you and get away with it. They compare the data. So, but you can't get together and discuss fees. That's a big joke.
Is what we are dealing with. So what do you, I mean, you said something very important that I want to reflect on. We are standing in a circle with if you were to be a squad, What do you recommend dentists can do? Some dentists, a lot of dentists that I've worked with, like yourself, they're great people. How can we strengthen our fraternity to the profession? How can we get over our egos and our disputes and actually regain our autonomy back before these third parties squeeze us more and more into the corner?
You know, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I'm reminded of a story of a young man standing on a beach. The tide has gone out, and he's throwing starfish back into the ocean. And somebody comes up to him and says, "Young man, you can't possibly save all the starfish. You can't possibly make a difference for all these starfish in the beach." And as he throws one back in the ocean, he says, "But I made a difference for that one."
I see.
So to me, it's one at a time. And if I can help a dentist get out of this network, I have helped one of those one at a time. I've made a difference for that one. I've made a difference for that doctor's patients. I don't know that I can solve the problem, because I know that, you know, no matter what you do, nobody's, you know, I would be foolish to think that I could get all the dentists in the United States to go out of network. It won't happen. It won't happen. But
some will find arbitrage opportunities and pick up more insurance, but if they want to work harder for less money, and then by all means, go right ahead.
I agree. I mean, it's silly. And here's the problem. Once you're addicted to this insurance, and see, what they're doing is they're using the insurance as their marketing arm. Now, we have clients, and we recommend that you spend, you know, maybe up to, you know, from 6 to 10% of your gross on marketing.
It's a good number. Well, that's like an SBA approved number for business.
Yeah, but think about this. If you're using your PPO network for your marketing arm, you're spending 25 to 35% for marketing by agreeing to do the treatment at 25 to 35% less than your normal fee. And those patients come to see you because you're on the list of the insurance company. That is your marketing department.
Yes,
and you're spending 25 to 35% for that marketing.
That is true. So, Doc,
I shared with you, doing $5 million out in Oregon. He doesn't spend anything on external marketing.
Can you? How much do they spend on external marketing?
Zero.
Zero.
Yes.
So you told me that that example was in a small town where there was quite a bit of competition, and yet still they mastered. Is it the quality of work they do? Is it word of mouth? What do you think drives that?
Well, we asked that question. It is the quality of work. The doctor is a CE junkie. He provides a great service. He provides IV sedation. He does implant placement. He does everything. He has 2 other doctors in there working as well. But, you know, for example, it's a brand new office, 16 operatories. You walk into the office, that receptionist comes around the counter and greets you. She doesn't sit behind the desk and say, "Do you have an appointment here, sir?" No, she comes around and greets you by name because she knows your name because you're on the appointment book.
Let me ask you, do you train front desk what to say and how to act? Because the little things matter, the cleanliness, the blankets, the shoulder tap, everything matters. To
of course we do. And remember, the first 30 seconds really count.
You only get one chance to make a first impression, right?
Right. You go into a top hotel today. You go into a top hotel, and you take a look at how those people at the desk treat you. They come around the desk to greet you. They come around the desk to hand you your keys in the envelope. They really take care of you, and that's what we need to emulate. Sitting back there behind the counter and looking for your name on the appointment book and guessing. No, you've got to be on it, and you've got to jump out there. And you know, I had a client a number of years ago. My first client to net $1 million. And this was 25 years ago. It was a lot of money. $1 million net was a lot of money 25 years ago. It still is, by the way. And you work in his office, and he had 4 dentists in there working. And it was in a corner location in a shopping center, a mall type where you'd normally see a bank, perhaps. And his directions to the receptionist was, you come around that counter. You greet that patient by first or last name. Your first words out of your mouth better be a compliment, perhaps how you're dressed, thanks for being on time, whatever it is. And it was right hand, left hand on the forearm. He says, bend your knees, look them in the eye, and you're going to write down on the chart what color eyes they have.
Wow.
And he said, and somebody, I remember telling that in a seminar, and somebody said, well, I just don't warm up to people quite that fast. His response to that was, next.
Thanks.
If you're gonna work here, you better behave like you won't up to people that fast. And so everything they do in these offices, you see, is first class. There's no we're not cutting corners. We're getting full fee. We can spend time with the patients. We don't have to rush to our next room. We don't have to rush through them. We provide complete treatment plans for patients based on what they said they wanted. It's not our value system, it's their value system. But of course we train people. We train people with scripts, and people say, well, I don't like scripts. And I said, well, they're phony. I said, well, why were you crying coming out of the theater? Good scripts are good, bad scripts are bad, but good scripts are very authentic.
Excellent, excellent. So it's the little things that I've noticed too that give me a lot of good reviews and referrals that way, and outside of box thinking has helped me also. I work on the weekends when nobody else wants to work out here in the Gulf heaven of Southern California. I have less customer acquisition expenses. That works for me. So let me ask you, Doc. You seen the corporations come around now from the insurance. We're gonna get back to that in a second. On the corporate takeover scenario, what do you tell a young guy that has that $500,000 debt and wants to start his or her life? And what is your prediction? What does the future hold for us with these organizations? Those are two questions that I'd like to have addressed.
The two questions. The first question, I'm going to take it in reverse order. The first question I tell them is, don't become an associate. Get out and start your own practice. Get out and either start a practice or buy an existing practice. But in most cases, being an associate, you're just wasting time. You're just buying time because you're not making enough money to pay off your $500,000 of student debt and make a living for your family. So get out and buy a practice. And I don't have time tonight to show you the math, but it's so simple. Buy a practice and get started, or find a niche someplace where you can start from scratch. But most part, I don't recommend that. So that's the second part of your question. Get a practice and start a practice. And I would start, I would go someplace. I would try and avoid the metropolitan areas. I mean, you were smart not to be in Orange County. You're out there in Palm Desert. It's a competitive area, but it's not as competitive as, say, Orange County or most of LA. That's smart. I would go to a smaller community, preferably rural. That's where the dentists do the best, and you can always travel to the cities. I mean, it's interesting. People that live in the cities travel to wilderness places for vacations, and people that live in wilderness vocations travel to the city on vacation. So,
it's always greener on the other side, Doc.
Yeah, but I would say, first off, don't be an associate. Just get out and first off, I would say learn the skills. Learn the skills to set you apart from the other dentists. IV sedation's one, implant surgery. That's a dynamite combination. Then what I would say about the DSOs and the corporate takeover, it's going to continue for a while. But here's my take on it. Your big companies like Heartland Dental, and when you take a look at Rick Workman, who put that together, he makes it look simple. He makes it look simple. They're up to what, 800 offices now, or 1,000 offices. He makes it look easy. The Aspen Dentals, the people like that, are going to make it look easy. So right now there's a movement going on for dentists to get 4 or 5 practices, and traditionally practices have been worth 1.5 to 2 times net income. In other words, 1.5 to 2 times net cash flow. But these offices are using Wall Street, and that's what banks have used traditionally for years, the value of a practice. Well, how much will we loan? But these DSOs are using private equity money. They're using private equity money, and they're paying 4 and 5 and 6 times multiples for practices. But you get 4 practices and they're worth, say, 2 times net, and then you put those 4 practices together with 4 more, and all of a sudden they're worth 3 or 4 times net, and then you keep expanding, and the number goes up. And as long as there's Wall Street money, it will go on. But someday, these investors are going to take a look at this and say, there's no ROI here. We paid too much money. There's too much ROI, and that money's going to go away. So if you're thinking about selling right now, I would go, if you're tired and worn out in dentistry, first off, call us and we'll help you enjoy it again. But if that doesn't work, I mean, if that's not what you want to do, then I would sell right away, because that bubble's going to burst. And there are several experts in our profession that study the business are saying exactly the same thing. That bubble will continue.
More than half of the industry can't wait for that day to come. It will be a glorious day.
It will be. It will happen. It's just a matter of time.
Because Bill, let's be frank about it. It was a doctor-patient relationship. That's what we adore. That's a sacred relationship. And then you got scenarios where you have floor supervisors telling these young guys that that are in their practices to go do fillings here and do crowns here. That's not what we signed up for. And then you got dentists that sort of I can't find a better word than selling us out, because in 47 states, a dentist is required to own a practice. That's the state laws. What they do is they set up these management entities, hold all the assets, dump the charts on the doctor. That doctor is on vacation. He's got his name on 20, 30 offices. And then these young guys come in, and then people that have no fraternity to our profession are telling them what they need to be doing. Well, in the practice, it's a horrible scenario. You know, it goes on. It goes on in a lot of these practices. And that doesn't sit well with us. So at some point, somebody's got to do something. So we will be very glad to see
I think
they come around.
When you look at their corporate charter, patient care is not part of it. Patient care is not part of the vision. Patient care with patients is not part of it. It's all about the quick buck. And I get kind of discouraged sometimes when I hear about doctors flipping practices, like it's a piece of real estate. We're flipping practices. I'll buy this practice and I'll build it up and I'll flip it. To me, that's wrong. That's not about patient care. That's about making a quick buck. The beautiful part of dentistry is you can practice ethically. You can practice out of network. And you can make a really great living for yourself with a great lifestyle, with time off and time to take CE courses, time to take your family on wonderful vacations. You can live well, save enough money to live with dignity in retirement, and leave enough money for your kids to fight over.
That's it.
Without making this buck. I guess when we're younger, many of us think that quick buck is the dream. But you know, as you get older, and I look around, I'll be 77 in 3 weeks. Wow. And I look around, and I mean, just like this week, here's Omar Reed's memorial service I'm going to. Dick Barnes dies 2 days ago. You know, I lose friends on a weekly basis. And what happens is that as you get further along in life, you start to realize what's important. Time with your family, time with your friends. You know, I look at the divorce rate in dentistry, and it just floors me to think, why is that? Well, part of it is the chasing the. Listen, I'm not opposed. I've made a very good living my whole life. I live a very nice life, and part of that is due to the living I've made. But it's not the quick buck. It's kind of slow and steady wins the race, and that's what I see missing in so many young doctors today. They want to get as many offices as they can, and they want to get out as quickly as they can. I literally have clients who are my age that are still practicing. Now, they practice 3 days a week. They take a week off every month. They're doing the dentistry they enjoy. They've got a team of people they enjoy. They enjoy their patients.
Not all of them have to, Bill. Not all of them have to work. Some of them do it for their own personal entertainment and pleasure and hobby, and we can all get there. But you're right. The quick buck never materializes. Wealth is built over time. You have to have patience. But if you're working for somebody else, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that you're building their dreams, their desires.
You're building their wealth.
Yeah, and building no wealth. I mean, do you really believe that equity is sort of equal to autonomy and freedom?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's an interesting thing. I grew up on a dairy farm. And, you know, I have 2 brothers, and I remember my dad talking about the fact that equity, owning a farm was security. And when you have a job, he says you have a lunch bucket. That's it.
Yes.
And,
Isn't that true?
And he's right. And the thing about working in the DSOs and working for corporate dentistry, you have a job. You simply have a job. And that, you talk about security, they can sell that entity over the weekend, and Monday morning your key doesn't fit the lock, and your position's been eliminated over the weekend. It happened. And
happens all the time. They're revolving doors, they call them, at the corporate.
Oh, yeah. And I have a client who sold to one of the DSOs. It didn't work out very well for him. And they promised to keep him on, and they kept him on until one of the bean counters came around and says, "Doctor, you're not doing enough Invisalign." He said, "I've never done Invisalign. I'm not trained in Invisalign. No, I don't present Invisalign." And they fired him for that.
Yeah.
After 35 years, he's fired because he doesn't do enough Invisalign. He doesn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then after pressuring you to produce more and more, so these hedge funds see better numbers, when something goes bad, they point a finger at you. You did the mistakes, and the boards come looking for you. So it's a lose-lose situation most of the time. You know, I wonder, based on our discussion, if there would be a place for them in society. Maybe they should be accepting all the government aid and the insurances, and we'll put them there for that.
That's a whole nother subject. I'm not even going to go there.
But for our colleagues, this is you have to be your own owner, your own boss. Nobody tells you what to do. You have your heart and investment in it. You're going to care the most, and you're going to set the agenda. Nobody else.
That's why most of us chose dentistry in the first place. I mean, I looked at different ways, different things to do for a living. I looked at various things, and I looked at medicine, and medicine was already starting to go that direction of the corporate world. While I was practicing, in the 20 years I practiced, almost all the physicians in our small town, there were 50,000 people in town. There were over 100 physicians, and when I came to town, half those physicians were working for a large clinic. 20 years later, there was all the physicians the ones that didn't belong at the clinic joined the hospital staff, and they were working as employees for the hospital. And you see that all over the country, and that's what's going on. I mean, you take a look now, there are less and less independently employed physicians. I mean, they're the rarity. They started with the anesthesiologist, the radiologist, the pathology, and then they just gradually took over everything. And that would be the plan here. If you could read the corporate plans of these insurance companies, I'm sure they want to employ dentists as strictly employees. And look at pharmacy. Pharmacy has gone that way. I mean, a pharmacist today has a job working by the hour, and they don't do pharmacy, they count pills.
It's so sad. And soon they're going to replace them with machines. You give these people a finger, they're going to take your whole arm.
That's good. Well, I think that, and one of the things that I quote too, and I mentioned Omar Reed as one of my early mentors, and one of his quotes was, "If someone's done it, it's probably possible." If someone's done it, it's probably possible. And we have all these clients who have done it in various locations around the country that are strictly fee-for-service. They're doing treatment plans they enjoy. And if they've done it, someone else can do it as well. And what I hear constantly, Tino, is, "Yeah, but I can't do it." And then they go on to tell me all the reasons why they can't do it. And it's an interesting thing with humans. We all tend to argue for our own limitations. And the problem is we listen to the argument. we listen to the argument and we believe it. And as long as you do that, and as long as you're arguing for that limitation, you're correct. But if you change that little voice in your head that says, someone did this, someone had a similar situation to me, maybe if I got the right mentors, maybe if I had the right training, I could do the same thing. But I think that's the attitude that I would like to see dentists get, is that if it's been done, it must be possible. I want to make a quick little announcement here too. We have a book. We write books all the time, and we have a book, Blatchford Blueprints 2.0, I believe is the title.
I saw that. I wanted to ask you about that and some of the other topics that you work on. But what is this book, the 2.0, the book that they can get to read all of these beautiful things about?
Yeah, you can go, just do this. You can do this while you're watching or as soon as we're done. But just go to Blatchford, Blatchford.com/free book. Fill in a short bit of contact information, and we'll actually you'll pay the postage, we'll send you the book. But here's what's in the book. It's a lot of information that we've learned. We're working with 4,000 clients. There's several real life examples of dentists kind of telling their story of what they're doing, what they're able to do. And as a matter of fact, the doctor I talked to earlier that's in Montana that collects $100 an hour to make an appointment during her block time is in that book. And she has no cancellations, by the way. You think about that. No cancellations. Everybody's paid. And that's just such a beautiful thing. And when people pay in advance, and anyway, it's an easy thing. So it's blatchford.com/free book. And
I put that in the comment section so people can click on it and go up. So Bill, that's great. Can you tell me a little bit about the 7 principles of highly profitable dentists, what your work was there?
Well, we obviously use that from Stephen Covey's title, you know, 7 Habits of Life. And I've used Stephen Covey's book as a textbook for our clients for years. I think it's an incredible book. If you've not read the 7 Habits of Stephen Covey, you need to read it. I mean, it's incredible. And, you know, he talks about being proactive. He talks about beginning with the end in mind. He talks about, you know, everything that we talk about in our program. And so we've really used this, but the principles of starting a dental practice are really simple. And I'm not going to go into all 7 on this call, but, you know, the first thing you want to do is come up with a vision for life. Begin with the end in mind. I mean, figure out where are you going? What's the point? What is the end game here? Why do you do this is really important. And then start setting goals. And the other thing too is I am a big believer in, if you want to be successful at anything, find someone who's doing it successfully and copy what they're doing. Kino mentioned about teaching younger people and not have to learn from your mistakes. They say that a great thing to do is learn by your mistakes, but I'll tell you something's better than learning by your mistakes. Learn from someone else's mistakes.
Yes. Let me ask you on this particular point, with all of the CE and all of these people claim to be experts, how does a young person select the right venue to get the advice that they need?
You know, that's a good one, and I think one of the things I would look for, and of course I'm a little bit biased.
Well, you are a preeminent leader. You're very well respected in the industry.
I'm biased. And there are a lot of 30-year-old incident experts out there, and it just amuses me sometimes that, you know, on some of these forums people will write in and they've got a tax issue. And sometimes I will write in and I'll say, you know, when I have a dental problem, I contact a dentist. If I have a tax problem, I contact a CPA. If I have a legal issue, I contact an attorney. I don't contact a group of dentists for an accounting problem or a legal problem. And yet these people, I saw one today that has 98 responses to it, and none of them have any training in accounting. Yes. They're all dentists responding to how to post a certain thing. And it's a question for your CPA. It's not a question for a group of dentists. But I think one of the things I'd look at are results. You know, one of the things that we say in our corporate charter, in our corporate vision statement, is we want to be not the largest, we want to be the best, as evaluated by the results of our clients. I want to see results. And I have belonged to coaching programs and consulting programs, and myself as a participant my whole life. I want to see results. I want to see these people. And recently on one of these forums, somebody said, I'd like to see their books. And I wrote back and I just kind of described my life. And I said, you know, I've done this for 40 years, had a successful practice. I gave them numbers of my practice, what I was producing, what I was netting. Mentioned the fact that I lived 3 months a year on the beach in Mexico. I lived 3 months on a boat between Seattle and Alaska. I'm married to the same person for the last 52 years and more in love every day. And our 2 best friends are our daughter. And I've got enough money to leave that my kids will fight over. So figure it out.
So yes, you're right. Experience trumps all. That's what it comes down to. Experience trumps all.
And the results have been wonderful. And we share that with our clients. You know, it's been a wonderful life, and it's still a wonderful life. And I have no intention of retiring. Retiring for people who don't like what they do. I love what I do. Why would I quit? And
you have a lot more of those little fishes to save. There's 140,000+ of those in the sea.
That's right. And I'm going to go out there and try. But you know, and I hope my daughter will let me continue working for a long time, because I love doing what I do, and I love seeing these dentists. I see one of the doctors who wrote in and he just said, "Looking good, Bill." And there's a doctor I've worked with for 10 years. And I just have to brag about him a little bit. He works barely over 100 days a year. He's in our Big Docs Club, which means 1.6. And every year for the last 7 or 8 years, he and his wife and children take a month off in the middle of winter and spend it in Hawaii. Now, I took a month of August off every year, and I took our family on a small boat, small sailboat, up in the San Juans and Gulf Islands. And I'm just going to throw this out to you for your clients to think about. And obviously, this doctor who goes to Hawaii would agree with me. You know, the money I could have made in August, how valuable was that? But how much value was there with our family spending that time together on this little boat? Or how much time for Josh Lute's family to spend together in Hawaii every year? And he's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin is not a great place between mid-December and mid-January anyway. So I noticed this year they went for 3 weeks because their little boy is in school. They took him out of school 1 week. But what is that time worth? You know,
it's
what is
invaluable. It's priceless.
Well, when you look back on it, when your kids are raised, you look back on that time, you can't put a monetary value on that. And I see these posts and say, well, I can't take 2 weeks off at Christmas. That's $60,000 or $70,000, and I can't do that. I got to keep working. And I'm thinking, well, your kids are out of school, for heaven's sakes. Take the week off. Take 2 weeks off, and give your team the time off. And that's what becomes more valuable to us than. And the beautiful part of dentistry is if you take a week off or 2 weeks off or a month, we work by appointment. You still do the same amount of dentistry, you just don't do it.
Yeah, if you have the freedom to make your own schedule, then you can take those trips. You know, I travel all the time to lecture domestically, internationally, go to trips with my family. Some days, some weekends, I'm there, but some weekdays I'm not. It's just up to me what I want to do.
Exactly.
And, everybody's loving the relaxed environment. So, Doc, this has been a great discussion. Can you tell me a little bit about what's Blatchford in a box? Can the young guy afford Blatchford in the box?
Well, Blatchford in a box is something I put together. It's kind of an entry point in our program. The program is there. It's on an iPad. It's on a DVD. It's you can stream it. You can do whatever you want with it. The workbooks are there. The stuff to train your staff is there. Most of the people who buy Blatchford in a box end up doing our platinum coaching program. But gosh, it's a great way to get started, and that's what I put it together for. We've kept up with the technology of making it available to people. I mean, when I started, it was on cassettes, and so you see we've come a long ways. So, but you know, it's a great way to get started, and it's you start to get exposed to our philosophy and our you know, the technique. There's a lot in there on we call them the power questions. On the power questions, a lot in there on block booking. You see, to cut down and the scheduling is critical. I mean, that's one of the things that we really work with our clients on is the block booking. I invented block booking 40 years ago. I was working with a consultant named John Oldenburg, and he came in with a silly concept. And he said, have you ever had a really great day? Yes. And have you ever had a day that you wish you, and he used the example, have you ever used the, on a matchbook, become a truck driver? Of course, everybody says yes to that. And he says, well, who scheduled the good days and who scheduled the bad days? And the answer is we did both. He said, well, why don't we schedule all good days? And of course, we said, it's impossible. You can't do that. And he says, but you did it once. You did schedule a good day once, right? Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. And he said, why don't we schedule all days the same way? It's a concept that when you first look at it, you'll say it's impossible. But once you get into it, you'll say, no, it is possible. No, you'll have some glitches, and we do a lot of days where I suggest you call an audible to line of scrimmage and you change the play a little bit, but for the most part, it's the same schedule every day. And patient care is number one. You're not running from room to room. It's very productive, and it's just so easy. But
I love your philosophy. I will recommend you to all of my colleagues and friends, and I really thank you for decades of your life dedicated to our industry for advancing it and keeping the hyenas as far away from us as we can, and hope to be collaborating with you a lot more. I'm going to put the information on this video once I
I'll say one thing. I will accept all of that, except not dedicating my life, because it's not over yet. It's just the best so far.
decades. I mean, 4 decades. There's not many of Bill Blatchfords running around that are still fighting for us. I really appreciate it. So if you were to leave our colleagues, we've talked about insurance tonight, with practice management, with what the future might hold for us, about your books, your adventures, what has happened in the last 40 some years, and also your daughter taking over the business now and continuing your mission. What would you say to our colleagues that want to, what message would you leave them with, that want to better themselves and be competitive in their local communities?
Call me.
Call you. All right, that's fair enough. Call Bill Blatchford and he may take you to the next level.
And listen, I would be happy to have a private conversation with anybody on this call. You just call the office, go to the Blatchford Solutions, blatchford.com, get the free book, fill out your information, but I'm offering to anybody on the call, I'd be happy to spend some time with you one-on-one, discussing the situation you're in, and just giving you some ideas that I've learned over the last 40 or 50 years.
Wonderful. I put the web address for everyone down here that you can go to and get in touch with Dr. Blatchford. Dr. Blatchford, I must again really thank you for everything you do for our profession. Keep motivating, keep inspiring, and the more we work together and collaborate, that's going to be wonderful for our industry. And thanks again for taking some valuable time and spending it with me this evening. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kino. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.